I'm back with another episode of Cosplay Bites, the show about cosplay conventions and all the nerdy bits and bytes. For this episode, I have with me Ejen, who's mostly known for his books that are titled Cosplay in America. He has about two out, but yeah. So how's it going?
It's going pretty good. Yourself?
I'm doing great. So before we get into all that, there's just the regular housekeeping stuff. For those first time listeners, Cosplay Bike is a show that I run mainly talking about cosplay and all the conventions that are running around and, like just featuring cosplayers and talking about other conventions that they've gone to. And it's available on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, and a whole bunch of other platforms that it just opened up for me. But if you could rate and review the show, that would help out a lot. Over on my blog, The Lightning Palace, you can check out this past week's features on cosplayers like Jenny Belly's Espeon, 89 Styles Vol'jin, and then upcoming, I have Bombshell Cosplay in her Underwatch Zarya and Stella Chu as 2B. And I just got a whole bunch more planned, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. I just got to set everything up. And shout out to my current patrons over on my Patreon. I have Shaylin, Noah, Coralia Jade, Oh My Sophie, Kat Yuska Moonfox, Mink the Satyr, and Nicole Marie Jean. And yeah, that takes care of all of that stuff. So, yeah. So first off, yeah, so my guest is Ejen. He's mostly known for the Cosplay in America books. And why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, okay. Let's see here. I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. I moved to California about 10 years ago. You please, Steve. I apologize about that. I'm actually watching my sister's kids, and she kind of threw this upon me. And she's like, "You watch the kids for 2 hours?" I'm like, okay, sure. So,
Houston, Texas.
Let's see here. What can I say about myself? I started, my first convention was 2008. That was Anime Expo.
Okay.
That was the first year that Anime Expo moved to downtown Los Angeles, because for years it was Anaheim, Long Beach, somewhere kind of far from where I was.
Right.
And so AX was where I actually got the idea of like, and you got to remember, this is 2008. So social media was basically MySpace at that time.
That's true,
so,
yep.
There weren't really that many, social media was not social media as we know it today. So at that time period, I thought the best way to get out what's going on at conventions is through books. So that's how the book came about back in 2008, or actually 2009. So it's been a while. I've seen a lot of changes in the cosplay scene, and it's going to keep changing too. So I can't wait to see what happens in the next 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So from what I remember, like seeing your post about your books, Cosplay in America was about you traveled to. Well, okay, so it was in America. So you traveled to like 5 different conventions. But it took me a second. Come on, I'm getting tired over here.
It's okay. It's Saturday.
Yeah.
It's a day of rest, or it's Sunday day of rest.
No,
but anyway, yeah. First book was 5 conventions, and the tricky thing was like I was going to places I've never been to before in my life. Like I went to Anime Week in Atlanta. I've never been to Atlanta before. I actually went to an anime convention, and it's kind of interesting because it's kind of influenced me to travel for conventions. Like now I want to go to foreign countries and go look at their conventions, and then spend a few days, exploring the city itself.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting, but it was 5 the first time.
Okay.
Second book was 20 cities.
20 cities.
Well, that book, the second book took 3 years to do. That was
okay. Well, that makes sense then. Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy. That the first book only took me 7 months to travel to, because it was all in 1 year. So I started at I started Phantom A, and I ended at Otakon. No, I actually can't remember now. But it was like 5 conventions over like 6 months or 7 months or something like that.
Well, that must have been a fun, crazy ride.
Yeah, inexpensive too.
And
I only had
expensive.
credit cards.
That's the truth.
I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know you can room with people because if I knew you could room with people, I would have just like done that. But I didn't know anything about that. That was my first time out of the state for conventions. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, you're in a hotel room, you know. So now I know better. Now I can actually travel
Now.
pretty well. You know, I can room it up with people.
Oh man. Okay, so did you say that Anime Expo was your first convention ever?
Okay, my first convention ever would have been some comic book convention my dad took me when I was 10. I don't remember the name of the convention at all.
Okay.
And I only spent like 2 hours there and I was really young, so I just remember seeing white boxes of comic books and I was just, like excited because they were comic books.
Yeah, yep. That's a comic convention
Yeah.
for you. A lot of white lawn boxes. I know I got a couple in my room right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating how Comic Cons have changed from like a room with just white boxes to like, you know, vendors selling all kinds of geekum stuff. Like it's
Yep.
not it's kind of broadened. I mean, now I see insurance companies selling stuff there. I don't know about you, but
Interesting.
I feel like the what do you call it, Progressive Insurance
Yep.
or State Farm or something like that.
Yep. They all have booths. I recall seeing Geico having booths at conventions. I think, and gaming conventions to some extent. I know, like, universities that specialize in gaming programs, they'll have like booths there to like showcase their school and whatnot.
Yeah,
Yep. Uh-huh. Um,
yeah, it's really kind of interesting to think about but it makes sense. Like they want to go target lots of people, and I mean, come on, conventions have really grown up over the past 8 years. It's just become part of.
the past decade or so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you say Comic Con to anybody in the country, they know what you're talking about. But you say Comic Con maybe 10, 15 years ago, they may not be, understanding of it. Unless you said maybe San Diego Comic Con, then maybe they'll probably figure it out.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it's changed a lot.
Yeah. So what was your first experience with cosplay? Like when did you first like see it or like really get into it?
That would be Anime Expo. Okay, so I
Okay.
knew about cosplay because of the internet, but so my first time going to see cosplayers was actually at Anime Expo, and it's a different experience to see them like online versus in person because you can interact with them, and some of them would actually be in character. So that was pretty awesome, and so I got a better appreciation. I think I got a better appreciation from meeting them than I did actually just looking at pictures online.
Right. And so then what compelled you to do like your books? Like what?
Like I said before, social media wasn't that big, and I wanted people to know about this. So I figured the best way to show people is to make a book. And the other reason is because I was a photographer by trade, so I was already. I think all photographers want to make their own books. So I think in the back of my mind, I've always been like wanting to do my own books. And I was always working for other photographers because I worked as a photo assistant. And sometimes when you work all the time working for other people, you have your own passion and you want to make your own thing, right?
Right.
So it just kind of came together. Now, obviously, it was probably not a good time because if you remember 2009, 2010, that was an economic crisis. It was crazy back then.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't have that much money, but I had credit cards. So okay, so in college, so I don't know if they do it anymore, but in the old days, they would have people like give out like T-shirts. If you get a free T-shirt, if you sign up for a credit card because they want people to sign up for credit cards. I was stupid. I signed up for a bunch of credit cards and I got way over my head, and I had to work off a lot of years to pay it off. But that put it in my head like, oh, I can actually get out of this if I wanted to. I can actually pay off my debt and then move on with my life. So when the book thing came around, I was thinking to myself, well, I can go into debt 20 grand or so. It doesn't. I mean, it won't hurt me as much because I can pay it off.
Right.
I already paid off like 20 grand previously.
Yeah.
So I think if I didn't get into trouble with credit cards in the first place, I wouldn't have known that I could actually pull off the first book like this.
Right.
I was
And
kind of stupid.
yeah. Yeah.
I
So
mean, think about it. Think about it. Let's think about this. So who would be crazy enough to go spend 20 grand on a book? Like, it's kind of like outrageous if you think about it, but I don't know why I did it. I'm very happy it worked out because I got out of debt within 3 years. I just went to Art Valley continuously for 3 years straight, and so I
right.
managed to pay off all my debts. But I usually don't recommend people do what I do because it wasn't exactly like the sanest
It
idea.
wasn't the smartest idea at the time, yeah.
But
Yeah.
whatever.
You're here now. Yeah. So do you still find time to go to conventions often throughout each year, or?
Okay, so back in 2011, 12, I was hitting 20 conventions a year. I'm down to like 10 conventions a year.
Okay.
Most of them are local, so I would say a good 3/4 of them are in Texas. So the most I would travel is 3 hours, and I still
Oh,
travel.
that's not bad. No.
Yeah, Texas is a pretty big convention. I'm sorry, it's a pretty big state with a lot of conventions.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, so I still go to conventions. I think I'm hitting up 10 this year, maybe 11. But
Right.
you have to be careful because there's a thing called burnout, and I burnt out really hard like a few years ago.
Yeah, no.
And I mean, it's pretty. I think this is actually pretty normal for anybody because they find out about conventions, they go to one convention, they're like, "Oh, this is fun. Let's go to another one." And they go to another one. The next thing you know, they're hitting like 5 conventions a year or more. And then there's a point where you just kind of burn out.
Yeah, burnout in like terms of like your energy, your time, your money. Yeah, because
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, back then I would do 3 or 4 a year, but now they've just gotten so expensive and
yeah.
other adult responsibilities where I try to restrict myself to maybe two to three a year, and they're always like the big ones that I always go to. So like I have New York Comic Con in 2 weeks.
Oh no worry. Oh, that's great. Oh man,
Yeah.
are you going to New York Anime? I mean, sorry, Anime New York.
No, I'm not that big into anime.
Hmm.
I'm more of a gamer and a comic book guy. So I mean, I have Comic Con in 2 weeks, and then after that, like the only other convention I went to this year was PAX East for
Oh
a
yeah,
day
yeah.
with some friends. But
It's
I'm
still in
hoping
Boston, right?
the one in Boston, correct.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I'm hoping to maybe go to PAX East again if things work out and like just go the full weekend, like just to go with my friends because that was a lot of fun instead of like how I used to be like going to cons by myself. Um, and I'm trying to see if I can hit up KatsuCon this year. I mean next year. This year
Next year, yeah,
this year I couldn't because of the changes they made in terms of you can't
yeah. I know.
you can't lobby
Yeah,
con it anymore. That's how I was able to go the last 2 years. It
it's kind of understandable.
is,
But
yeah.
back to PAX. Have you thought about going to PAX West or South or even PAX Australia?
If I had the money and the time, I would. I'd love to go to more out of state con. Like KatsuCon is the farthest I've ever went, and I'm on the East Coast.
How far is that from you?
So from Rhode Island to like I think it was like either Atlanta, Georgia, or somewhere where it was like relatively close to like where the con is. That was like a close to maybe a 10-hour train ride, maybe a little bit less.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of great that you live in a part of the country where trains are actually a really good form of transportation.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
how I was able to go to that's how I was able to go to PAX East for one day. So I just took the train in the morning and then just came back to the where I left my car at night. So that worked out really well. Yeah, I'd love to go. Excuse me. I'd love to go to I'd love to go to Dragon Con at least once. Like I'd love to go to I'm not a big guy Blizzard games fan, but I would love to experience maybe BlizzCon at least once because I know a lot of people like they bring out their big stuff at that
They
con.
do.
Uh
Yeah.
I mean, I know New York Comic Con had beaten San Diego in terms of attendance, but I would just love to experience San Diego at least once, like the OG convention of them all.
Yeah, I mean that thing started in like 1970, I think, or 69, or some.
Yeah, it's been around for a while.
Somewhere. Yeah, it has.
Yeah. Um. So, do you have any particular favorite conventions that you've been to over the years?
It's a really tough question because it changes a lot.
It's
But I'll tell you what I tell people. If you're coming from out of this country, I tell people go to Dragon Con. If you can only go to one con a year, I say Dragon Con.
yeah,
But it also depends on what you're looking for, because I say Dragon Con only because for costumes. Like if you're looking for merchandise or exclusives, I would say go to New York Comic Con or San Diego Comic Con. So
right.
it depends on what you're looking for. Um, Other favorite cons, I like NakaCon in Kansas City because it's kind of like a nice small or mid-sized homey convention.
Sure.
SenshiCon in Anchorage, Alaska is really nice. It's really different to be up, away from the 48 states. I'm sure there's more. I mean, let me see. I would say that for people who want to live in a place where there's lots of conventions, to live in Southern California, because there's about 100 conventions within a 3-hour driving distance of Los Angeles.
Yeah,
So
there's a ton in California.
it's crazy. I'm like, how does anybody keep, how
I
did
mean,
they,
it is a big state, but yeah, sometimes the amount of cons that are there just like baffle me.
it's just too much. But I mean, but if you think about it, so the 3 states with the most conventions are actually California, Texas, and Florida. So, and those are also 3 of the largest states in the country too, as
That
well.
makes sense.
So
Yeah.
that kind of makes sense.
Right.
So like I can't keep track of Florida conventions. There's just too many of them. There's just too many of them. So I gave up trying.
I gave up trying. Oh
Yeah.
man. Do you have are there any types of like cosplay itself that like really that are your favorite or like excite you the most? Like are you a fan of like the sewing or the armor work or
So my favorite one is the mashups or crossovers, because I
uh,
like taking 2 different things and putting it together into one thing. Because it doesn't really trick your brain, but your brain has to stop for a second and just reconfigure like what you're actually seeing, and then you got to
yeah.
pull it together. And I love it when people do that. I love it when people put their individual twist on their costume, like the Native American Captain America from San Diego Comic Con. I don't know if you saw that picture online.
I think I might have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like it when people trying to do that.
yeah, I know. There's one cosplayer that I'm featuring on my blog soon that was shared by another cosplayer that I follow, but he mashed up Green Lantern with Captain America. Like he just
See?
yeah, that's I like that kind of stuff. Like also the kind of weird mashups. Like you've probably seen this. It was the one. I wonder if it's the same person that's been doing it, but she did Taco Bell.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
for the
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so for those who don't understand, it's Belle from Beauty and the Beast in her like iconic golden yellow dress, but the bottom half of the dress, or like the dress itself, is shaped and made like a taco. Like that's just I don't know where people come up with this stuff.
I don't know, but that's amazing. I think there's 2 different girls doing those. I've seen one that's more like viral than the other one, but
Right.
and I don't even know where they're from. I mean, the problem I have sometimes is like I see pictures on Instagram, but nobody ever tags anybody, so I'm like, I don't know who these people are, so I can't contact them to interview them.
Right.
You know?
I'm also a huge fan of Gajinkas. So like
Oh yeah,
all the Pokemon Gajinkas, they get me going. They're just like, oh my gosh. Like I know
you should definitely go to Katsucon then. You see a
Ketchikan.
lot there.
Oh yeah, no, that's a big spot for Gajinkas. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and also just the scenery is just like beyond perfect for like photo shoots galore. It's insane.
It's kind of like crazy. If you've never been there before, it's almost like there's wall-to-wall photographers everywhere.
Yeah,
You know, But it's kind of funny because MagFest is in the same location, and I hear that, and I've never been to MagFest myself personally, so I don't know, but I hear that it's much easier to get photo shoots and stuff done there. And I think it's like a month before Katsu, I think. I'm not totally
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I think like MagFest is usually in January, and then Katsucon is in February. Yeah, I don't know. I guess. Yeah, I don't know because I think MagFest is more like a retro gaming convention.
From what I
So,
heard, I think it is, and there's also a music aspect to it too.
so I guess people don't really associate it with cosplay as much. But then you go to Katsucon, which is like it's the anime convention. It's like mostly anime, but yeah, people just associated with cosplay and are just like, oh, let's bust out all the beautiful, gorgeous stuff that I've been working on since like late last year, and
Well,
just going crazy.
I mean, it is like one of the first major conventions of the year. You think about it. OhioCon's first in where is it? Well, it's in Ohio, obviously, but it's in January, and then February comes in. It's Katsucon.
Yep.
Katsucon is actually it's like a really interesting thing because it's a 5-star hotel, and usually 5-star hotels and anime conventions don't mix too much. You know,
Yeah.
and you know, I mean, come on, you know why? And I'm sure you've seen the stuff on Twitter where somebody was spray painting the fire, the what's it called, the stairway. They were spray painting stuff, so there's marks on the ground.
Oh,
Yeah, you know, but I mean,
I've seen the stories. Yeah.
yeah, you know, but I think that it kind of comes with the territory. I mean, when you get anime conventions or comic book convention, or actually any huge group of people together, something's bound to happen.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah.
Fortunately,
Um. Let me see what else I could mention here.
I do want to ask about Rhode Island Comic Con. How big is that convention?
So okay, so Rhode Island Comic Con, it's gotten bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time, like the first couple of shows, it was only restricted to the Rhode Island Convention Center.
Mm-hmm.
But then I guess when they realized like this is too much of a small space, or when they were realizing, oh, we're getting bigger and bigger and getting more guests and whatnot, they also opened up the Dunkin' Donuts Center, which is like an arena.
There's a Dunkin' Donuts Center. Wow, that's a great name.
Well, yeah, I guess Dunkin' Donuts must have had a hand in paying for it to be built, but it's basically where like all the events, like concerts, like hockey games, basketball
Mm-hmm.
games, but they added that in, and they're kind of like connected together, both the convention center and the Dunkin' Donuts Center. So like I went one year where they connected the two, and it definitely helped. But it's like you go into the Dunkin' Donuts Center, and it's like very weird from being what I used to be seeing it. Because the time that I would go there were like for hockey games back when I was little. So then like to see it like all covered up in like just like regular like hardboard like basketball like type floored, and then like you just have a bunch of vendors all lined up
Yeah,
in that area.
I call those stadium cons.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I call those.
yeah,
There's school con, library con,
yeah,
convention center con, stadium cons.
yeah. Some vendors will be part there. I know one year I think several cosplayers I knew that were there. I think it was Lynn's Cosmetics and Ricky. They were there one year, but they were first in the convention center, but then they got moved, I guess, because of some weird difficulty. They got moved over to the stadium area, so it was very weird. It's it can get crowded. The convention center has more of the vendors and more of the areas where you line up to go see some if you want to meet celebrities or if you want to go get your comic book signed. Um, it's it's getting bigger. I'm always amazed when I look on like Facebook and I see them do guest announcements, and it's just like, where do they get the money to pay to bring these people on? Like they've had like prolific like Star Wars actors, prolific like Avengers actors go to the show. It's like I did not realize my state that had this kind of power.
But that's kind of crazy because that's actually one of the conventions I actually want to go to. Like, there's my secret dream is to travel to basically a convention in every state in the country. I'm not even anywhere near close to that, but
Really?
yeah, but Rhode Island is actually on my list. So is Connecticut. But ConnectCon is more of a, I don't even know what kind of, it's not, it's a costuming. I don't think ConnectCon is a comic book convention, is it? I don't know.
I can't. I don't really know. I mean, I've definitely heard of it, but I don't really know. I
Yeah.
know. I don't know if Hartford Comic Con exists anymore.
I think it still does.
It still does because I know I went there one year. I've been to Boston Comic Con a couple of years. Because then I think Boston Comic Con changed venues where it was at. I want to say it was this like the Seaport place or something in Boston, but then it got changed to where the Heinz Center where PAX East is held.
Yeah.
So that got changed because I was there 2 years ago with my dad, and it was there, and I had been there before at this new location. But yeah, it's interesting. Some of the venues that these conventions will have, like you said, like I definitely have seen and heard of like library cons or cons like in like school gymnasiums or whatnot. It's interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
I think it's pretty awesome because that means like cons are becoming more accepted. Because when I was a kid, I mean, the cons at USC would be comic book conventions, and it wouldn't be like people wouldn't really know about it unless you knew about it through the comic book store that you went to, you know.
Yeah.
And now libraries have it. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like convention life, great. You know,
right.
I'm just curious how far it's going to go because at some point there'll probably be a tipping point. You know, like they're going to reach an apex.
Right. Right.
But we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So I've never actually gotten a chance to like get a copy of one of your books, but I'm curious, like, so what are they? I guess both books are essentially identical in certain ways, just different in terms of like sizing and content. But like, so do you interview cosplayers?
Okay.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. So the first book was very photo intensive. It was just pictures of cosplayers with a few quotes. The second book, the reason why I went to 20 cities and took 3 years is because I would actually follow cosplayers as they go through fabric stores, thrift stores. I would follow them home while they were making their costumes. I would follow them to hotels, day zero, while trying to finish their costume. I would follow them out on a convention floor. It was kind of like a look at convention culture.
Yeah. All right, there we go.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I'll fix it. So, all right, you're talking about cosplay culture.
Well, see, I felt that people would. Okay, so if you type in cosplay into Google, you get an idea of what cosplay is, and they're usually taking pictures. They're usually pictures taken at the convention, so they don't really show you what goes on like before you're at the convention, right? So unless you're a cosplayer or you know cosplayers, you don't know how much work they put into it.
Right.
So I decided to just do a book about that.
Yeah. So the second book went more into that with like interviews. So we were talking about cosplay culture and you following cosplayers around.
Yeah, because I don't think anybody did that before, and the fact is, a lot of people when they think of cosplay, they just think of cosplayers they meet at conventions, but they kind of miss the point about like what they all do, which is they do a lot of stuff that I don't think the average cosplayer think about, unless they're obviously cosplayers or friends with cosplayers. They don't see it. So I thought this is a good way to kind of broaden it out, and also the books makes it so accessible to people who don't go to conventions, so they get a chance to see what goes on in conventions without actually being at a convention.
Yeah. And then I know I'd see you talk about it, but you're trying to hopefully get a third book out.
Yeah, so I did a Kickstarter back in July, but it failed, which I was kind of surprised. But on the other side of it, I wasn't kind of surprised because social media has changed so much, and you know, before you should be able to reach more people, but now it's kind of limited. So I'm reconfiguring my book, and then I'm launching another Kickstarter in January of 2020. And that's the third Cosplay America book. And this one's really interesting because I went back and I re-photographed the same cosplayers I photographed in 2009. So it's like 10 years. So, and every cosplayer gets a page to talk about their experience cosplaying. So this is the first time I'm giving everybody in the book a chance to have their own words, you know, because a lot of times cosplay books, they just show pictures and that's basically it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like having their voice gives a better idea of who they are, what they go through, and why they do what they do.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
All right. If there's anything else you want to talk about or mention, I mean, you can do that, or we could just wrap it up right here.
Let's see. I feel that cosplay has gotten better, and what I mean by better is that maybe in 2008, 2009, cosplay meant that you were cosplaying from a Japanese media, which means, you know, manga, anime, whatever, whatever. If you're
Yeah.
into comic books, it would be called costuming. But today, you're free to cosplay what you want to cosplay. There's no boundaries. You can alter a costume to your own liking if you want to. You can do crossovers. You can do all this stuff. So before, where they say, well, if you cosplay this character, you have to be exactly like this character. That's pretty much out the window. Now you can be anybody, anything, which is I think it's amazing. And I also feel this is really helpful for some young people because I remember as a teenager, I was trying to figure out who I was at a time, and I wish I had conventions to go to help me along the way. I figured it out on my own, but I think I would have figured it out faster if I was actually at conventions because it's a chance to kind of be with. Look, I was always the geeky comic book anime kid in high school. There wasn't that many people into that stuff, so
Yeah.
that there's a way to connect with people across with the internet and conventions. It's that despite the problems that there is in the cosplay culture, I still think it's in a better place than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely changed. All right. Well, I think that about a good point to wrap up. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of Cosplay Bites, and thank you so much, Ejen, for joining me. I hope you had fun.
No worries. It was great. Thank you so much.
No problem. So, if you want to follow me, you can follow me on my Instagram, Lightning Palace blog, and then just Lightning Palace on my Twitter, and then I also have my Patreon, which you can sign up for as well, but it's completely free to view. Ejen, if they want to follow you, where do they go?
Cosplayinamerica.com. That's basically it. All my social media is on there. So,
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening, and I'll see y'all in the next episode. Take care.
okay. Thank you. Have a great one. Bye bye.